$75.49, the pound buying $1.24 and €1.11. LBC weather staying humid through tonight with outbreaks of heavy rain across northern, eastern and some central parts of England, a low of 11. Tomorrow a mix of sunshine and showers, which will be heavier in the far northeast, and also Scotland, a high of 23 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Lisa Aziz.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Good evening and welcome to another edition. We're discussing this evening the question of a general election and the leaving of the European Union on the 31st of October. And there's a news flash because the Prime Minister, our new Prime Minister, and how great it is to say those words, Prime Minister, before the name Boris Johnson, has absolutely ruled out calling a general election before the UK leaves the European Union on October the 31st. So what I really want to know is what you think. Do you think that it's inevitable, that it's too difficult to get out by the end of October? Or are you Brenda from Bristol and feel that we really don't need an election yet, that we should go until 2022, we should carry on because that's what the Fixed Term Parliament Act determines? Now, this week's slightly different for me because I've been appointed a government minister. So before anybody rings in and says, what am I doing a radio show, I'm not getting paid for this one. So the ones before you will see in my declaration of interest, I received an emolument for, but on this occasion I'm not, because it would be wrong to do so as a minister. But let's get down to the subject. Lots of calls coming in, and the first is Christine in Battersea. Christine, what's your view on the prospect of an election?
Well, we had a professor on Eddie Mair's show just half an hour ago saying he thought there would be an election in September, because he said that it looked like Mr. Johnson was gearing up his cabinet for an election and so on. But my question is, how does he think he would win an election, seeing as most Conservative MPs are pro-Remain?
Well, I'm not sure most are. I mean, I think there are some who are still very pro-Remain, and there's a majority in the House of Commons pro-Remain, but not a majority of Conservatives. There are perhaps 40, 45 strong Remainers in the Conservative Party, and the rest are either leavers or have accepted the result.
Oh, I see. That's not the impression I got. But,
no, I'm afraid the Remainers make a lot of noise, but it's sort of sound and fury that signifieth nothing in terms of the overall balance of the Conservative Party, but they're quite important because it's a hung parliament.
I see, because I've just heard an announcement, LBC, that Mr. Johnson has ruled out an early election, but then again so did Mrs. May rule out an election, and then she called one.
Yes. The key thing is, of course, the Fixed Term Parliament Act of 2011. It's, in the old days, the Prime Minister could just go to the Queen and say, I want an election, I want Parliament to be dissolved. But now you have to have a vote in the House of Commons for it. And where I think your question so rightly gets to the heart of the matter, there are lots of MPs who are Remainers who wouldn't get re-elected, so they don't want an election. And that makes it very, very hard to get one, especially as the Prime Minister doesn't.
I see. So it wouldn't be a case of getting new MPs into those seats who were Brexiteers then?
Well, you wouldn't be able to do that until there was an election, and then you'd have to have re-selections, which are quite difficult to do, and so on. So I don't think that's immediately in prospect. So you'd have to have a vote of MPs for an election, and MPs who thought they might lose their seats because they're Remainers, one would expect, be very reluctant to do it.
So, obviously, it looks like the professor was wrong in his prediction for an early election then, according to that. I
would have thought so. Professors don't always get everything right, unless I'm very worried. I hope it wasn't my great friend Professor Vernon Bogdaner, who almost always gets things right. He's absolutely brilliant. So if it wasn't him, it's a professor who's probably got it wrong. But time will tell. Thank you, Christine. I'm going to go to Daniel in Childs Hill. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Hi, Jacob. My thoughts are that I was so pleased to hear that Boris Johnson's ruled out calling a general election. The last thing this country needs, as Brenda from Bristol said, is another one, yet another election. And I really think that Boris should be given a chance as Prime Minister to undertake the policies that he said that he would campaign on, and that he campaigned on when he wanted to be Prime Minister, like raising the income tax threshold to give people more money, put more money in their pockets, like reviewing HS2. I think an election would be ridiculous, and it would more importantly, it would seriously endanger the UK by allowing the chance of that lunatic Jeremy Corbyn to get into power. So 2022 Fixed Terms Parliaments Act, let's give him a chance. Give him a chance, the Prime Minister Johnson, give him a chance to undertake the policies that he said he would implement.
And isn't it brilliant how much he's getting done already, that there's been a real sense of purpose since he became Prime Minister, and today's announcement of 20,000 more police, that the recruiting is going to start for that really quickly, things are getting underway, promises are being delivered on. And I think you're right. I think we need to give a chance for this energy to be turned into action, but it's a really exciting start.
It is. It's a very exciting start. And as an ex-police officer, I was very pleased to hear there are going to be 20,000 more police officers. But, Jacob, could I, obviously you are in government, the biggest thing that I would say that could help is to scrap the IOPC, the Independent Office for Police Conduct. They are the biggest threat to police officers and possibly the biggest deterrent to new police officers joining. My personal opinion, the IOPC are out of control. They have hounded police officers, brave frontline police officers who are tackling violent criminals on the streets every day, streets of the UK. The IOPC have turned into the Gestapo. They really have. The police officers that I know, or people who wanted to join as new police officers, are saying, I'm not going to do it now because of the IOPC. So if I could pass on any feedback or anything to try and help the criminal justice system and help Prime Minister Johnson deliver on his pledge for 20,000 police officers, it would be to seriously start tackling the menace of the IOPC.
Well, thank you for that. Now I am a minister. I'm bound by collective responsibility, which means I can't any longer fire off with all my views. I have to accept the position of the government. And therefore, it's not for me now to say what should be done with the IOPC. It's a matter for Priti Patel, who is such a brilliant person to be Home Secretary. So I'm going to be rather non-committal and fence-sitting on that, for which I apologise. It is the quid pro quo for having been given a promotion. But Daniel, thank you. Your point has been made. We've had some tweets coming in. Lynn says, how can the Tories prevent Parliament from stopping a no deal? And I think it's worth explaining the answer to that, because it's a key question, Lynn. Thank you for sending it in to me. The law says that we will leave on the 31st of October, and that can only be changed by another Act of Parliament or by the Prime Minister asking for a different date. And the Prime Minister won't ask for a different date, and it's very, very hard to see, speaking as Leader of the House of Commons, how an Act of Parliament could be got through changing that date. So thank you, Lynn, for your question. But James in Pinner is on the line. James, good evening.
Good evening, Jacob. Good evening to you, and congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
Thoroughly deserved.
Oh, you are kind. Thank you.
That's okay. Thoroughly deserved, as I said. On the basis of what the Prime Minister's pronouncement just in the last half an hour, I think it's a fundamental mistake, and I'm going to tell you why. There are a number of Leave voters, such as myself, that have been following the whole saga for many years prior to the referendum, and we are very jaundiced about the performance of the Conservative Party over the last 3 to 4 years, to the extent that we feel that the outcome, if it is not explicitly shown or stated in whatever way that may be, that we will end up with a Brino solution rather than a true, clean Brexit. And the key parts to that, let me just break it down a bit. The key parts to that are, we need to, all the standard statements about we need to make our own laws and all the things, sovereignty and those sorts of things. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, because we must have unfettered ability to make our own trade deals, and we must not be bound to EU standards which means that technical product standards actually stop us being able to operate in those trade deals. And I fully understand the fact that there will be divergence over time and those sorts of things, but the fundamentals of the types of things that the EU have tried to bind into the withdrawal agreement are basically restrictions upon us that means that we can't leverage a position as a global or international player in our own right. That is the position that a lot of us are looking at, and if there is anything that the Prime Minister comes forward with which has even the slightest flavour of that, it will not be supported. And I think the only way he can really get a clear mandate to do the type of deal, if it's to be a deal, to do the type of deal that someone like myself would look for, would be if he had the arithmetic in Parliament to enable him to bring that forward. Now,
so would you prefer no deal, therefore?
Yes,
okay.
I would. But
I've got to stop you because it's 1:15, and I just want to get that answer in. You're listening to me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, live on LBC, and at 6:15 it's time for the news with Lisa Aziz.
Boris Johnson has absolutely ruled out calling a general election before the UK leaves the EU at the end of October. A former NHS nurse who falsely claimed he'd been abused in the 1970s and 80s by a VIP paedophile ring in the heart of Westminster has been sentenced to 18 years in prison. A problem with a radar system that's brought major disruption to passengers at Gatwick and Heathrow airports today has now been fixed, but delays will go on for the rest of the day. LBC weather staying humid tonight with outbreaks of heavy rain across northern, eastern and some central parts of England. Drier elsewhere, a low of 11 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. On the rails, East Midlands trains have a severely reduced service between St Pancras and Kettering after overhead line damage yesterday. They're advising you not to travel for the rest of the day or over the weekend. Thameslink, they also have delays and cancellations between St Pancras and Bedford. TfL Rail, they have no service between Liverpool Street and Shenfield. That's because of a signal failure. On the Underground, there are severe delays on the Piccadilly line between Acton Town and Heathrow Airport. Onto the roads, on the M25 anti-clockwise, it's taking around an hour to queue to the Dartford Tunnel from Junction 3 for the M20. On the M25 clockwise, there are queues from Junction 22 for St Albans to Junction 23 for the A1M because of a medical emergency, and there are delays and cancellations to some flights to and from Heathrow and Gatwick Airport. That's after a technical problem earlier at air traffic control.
This is LBC.
Food freedom isn't just about knowing exactly what your favourite curry is. It's about pretending that tonight's the night you will finally try something different on the menu. Before bottling it at the last minute and ordering the one you always get. Because deep down you know exactly what your favourite curry is.
Go on then.
Fire up the Deliveroo app and find your food freedom today.
This is LBC.
From discovering electricity to revolutionising work, play and communications, innovators do amazing things when they think beyond limits. So Vodafone are giving small businesses the power to unlock their full potential with their unlimited 5G data plans, plus business add-ons to keep your business running smoothly anywhere. Go beyond your limits. Find out more and enter to win a Samsung 5G device plus £1,000 for your business at lbc.co.uk.
Switch to BT Business Broadband today and get connected tomorrow. Our most reliable broadband connection yet is backed by our 4G network and now comes with a fixed price guarantee, which means your connection won't go down and our prices won't go up. Whatever your business, go online and search BT Business Broadband to find out more. BT, be there. Subject to availability. Fixed price guarantee for your contract duration. T's and C's apply.
William, Pamela and Anthony were sold investments by banks and ended up losing money. Luckily, they contacted the financial claims experts at Goodwin Barrett and were able to claim back a total of £65,500. At Goodwin Barrett, we may be able to help you too. If you've lost money on an investment sold by a bank, even if you no longer have the investment or the paperwork, just text GOOD to 60777 for a free assessment on how much you could be owed. Text GOOD to 60777 and we'll call you back.
There are few greater joys in life than a sumptuous hot bath. Time to let the stresses of the day just melt away. Unless your plumbing goes. That's a recipe for a meltdown. But Trusted Trader are always on hand to help. TrustedTrader.com have lots of really lovely tradespeople who are vetted, reviewed and reliable. So if you need a plumber or other professionals in their trade, just relax. Trusted Trader are only a click away.
This This is LBC with Jacob Rees-Mogg. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850.
Oh, welcome back. Well, lots of calls coming in. We're discussing the question of a general election by the 31st of October, whether it would be possible to deliver Brexit by then without having an election. And in breaking news, Boris Johnson ruled one out. So we're getting lots of calls coming in. But if you think there should be an election, I'd be really interested to hear from you. We have lots of people who want us to carry on and not have one. But I'm always interested to hear the contrary view, and I won't consider you to be a snowflake if you say that. I think it's a perfectly reasonable view to have. But in the meantime, we're going to go to Paul in Gibraltar. Paul, what's your thought?
Hello, Jacob. You're a man who knows the financial markets. The pound hit a post-referendum low against the dollar today, and it's doing very little. It's falling against the euro again. Why do you think there's been no show of enthusiasm for Boris? And isn't the simple fact that Parliament is in stalemate and there is no way out of this without an election? Either Boris compromises or it's stalemate. Parliament won't pass a Brexit withdrawal. And the markets are reacting to that, aren't they, by selling the pound? They're selling the pound hard.
No, the withdrawal deal's already passed, that the Withdrawal Act is passed, the Article 50 Act is passed.
So your only way out of it is to prorogue Parliament, isn't it? Otherwise they're going to attach something to a bill and they're going to stall it.
No, because they'd have to repeal the Act or have a vote of no confidence. So do you think they're going to do that? Do you think Conservatives vote to put Jeremy Corbyn in office?
Well, somebody's going to do something. I can't see how you are going to hold them off until October the 31st, and so that we just automatically leave.
Well, it's the law.
They're going to stop one way or the other. One way, fixed-term parliaments are the law, Jacob.
Yeah, but
they managed to call an election.
But the fixed-term Parliament Act has a provision for allowing for an early election, so that followed the law. But the law is...
They'll introduce a bill and attach something to it like they did last week. I'm not au fait completely with how they did that with that thing, but they attached something to another bill. There was nothing really to do with it. And won't they do the same thing?
But what will they do in this bill? How will they get this bill through Parliament? Because
you're the expert on Parliament, Jacob. I can't tell you anything about that.
Okay, but that's why I think it's very...
the majority.
That's why I think it's very difficult.
Leaving. Yeah, well, I know there is a majority against leaving.
Yes. I agree with you about that. But you must remember this majority against leaving voted both for the Article 50 Act and for the Withdrawal Act, which made it... I know they did, but they've changed their mind, haven't they? Well, I don't think they've changed their minds. I think they just recognise that with a with a referendum, 17.4 million people voting for leave, it's quite hard...
So why do you think the markets are selling the pound so hard, Jacob? You know, you're an investor, you're au fait with investing.
That's an indication that the markets are convinced that we'll leave. The markets have consistent...
So you think that the pound falling is a good thing, which is going to cause the pound to fall?
Well, the pound falling has been associated with Brexit doing well. And so in terms of Brexit, it's an indicator that we are going to leave. And it does, of course, help our exporters, that the decline in the pound...
But it does mean that the markets are taking a negative view of Brexit, doesn't it? Or no deal Brexit, at least.
It means that they're concerned about uncertainty, but markets are always concerned about uncertainty. That's what markets do.
So your view is that the pound will bounce once we have a no-deal Brexit, is it?
Well, I probably shouldn't give investment advice on the radio, but my personal view, yes, is that on departure, the reality would be much better than the markets are anticipating, and therefore the pound would rally quite strongly. I think the pound at this level is extremely good value.
You do?
Yeah.
And do you think Mark Carney agrees with you?
Oh, you better ask him. I think now I'm bound by collective responsibility. I can only say very nice things about... I've got to be a bit more careful. Thank you for calling, and thank you for making a long-distance call from Gibraltar. It's reassuring that LBC is global. But let's go to Mark in Hitchin. Mark, hello, good evening.
Oh, good evening, Jacob. Jacob, come on. Boris is playing you, your colleagues, and the rest of the public as fools. Of course there's going to be a general election. And the reason he needs that general election is because he wants to secure his dynasty at number 10. And where it stands right now, he'll be lucky to get past October the 31st. So if he can force a general election, split the Brexit Party, work on the inconsistency of the Labour Party and get a mandate to do what he wants to do, which probably might even be an EFTA deal, and secure his next 5 years, that's what he's going to do. It's all about Boris Johnson holding on to power.
But he'll hold on to power if he delivers Brexit. If he has an early election, he risks that. So surely it's better to deliver Brexit, and then he'll be enormously popular, cheered in the streets.
Oh, come on, you're not buying into all this rhetoric. He has set the bar so high over the last 2 days, so it's almost impossible to negotiate with the EU.
Well, up to a point, Lord Copper. It's the one thing Parliament voted for was to leave without the Irish backstop. So he could potentially get that through Parliament, and if the EU wants a deal, they must know the situation.
Yeah, but he knows that he is unlikely to get a deal. He knows that Parliament will stop him from getting a deal. So if he goes to the country and says, look, I've tried negotiating with the EU, they don't want to play. I can't get past Parliament. Look, everybody, I'm the victim. I'm trying to sort it out. So I need a general election. And I think he needs that general election because he needs a system using the first past the post system to get his way. Because I think if he goes for a referendum, I think he thinks he's going to lose.
I think the referendum would be completely unjustified, but if there were one, Leave would win again. It's really interesting. Voters don't like being asked the same question twice.
Oh, that's not true. I like being asked the question twice. If the facts have changed, I change my mind.
How did you vote? How did you vote last time?
Well, I voted to remain, but then again,
only Remainers want a second vote. It's always the way.
Well, can I also point out what I also want to know, Jacob, is that he's created basically a war cabinet, and it is frightening some of the people he has put into government. And I'm rather concerned because I know how you are, very positively, you stand up for the right of Parliament. Cannot fault you for that at all, Jacob. But when you get somebody like Dominic Cummings, who was found in contempt of Parliament, now sitting at the centre of government, how do you feel about that?
Well, that was something that has happened, and he was censured for doing it, and therefore his punishment is spent. And once people's punishment is spent, they are entitled to do important jobs. And he's a formidably able and intelligent man.
Yeah.
So I think that's good news, and he will be a help to Boris Johnson.
Can I just point out, you were talking about the punishment. Parliament was not prepared to bring him back into the House of Parliament because they didn't want him to play on the fact that he's been pulled back into the building and told off. And so they basically did it in writing. But the fact is, how can we have people in our Constitution who we have already found to undermine it? Let's look at Priti Patel. There she was off as international development.
Let's not, because we're discussing whether there's going to be an election, and I happen to think Priti Patel's absolutely brilliant. And I thought I should read out some tweets instead, because I think that's more interesting. From Chris in Leeds. Can you explain how John Major can stop no deal, as he has said he would? No, I can't explain John Major in so many ways. And then from Bill, who says, shouldn't Steve Baker have been offered a cabinet position? The failure to do so makes me wonder how deep the government's commitment to a clean Brexit really is. Well, Bill, I can't answer the first question. I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that the government is completely committed to leaving by the 31st of October. Boris said so clearly, if you kick the can, you kick the bucket. And Jane in Suffolk says, Jacob, do not underestimate the Remainer Tories like Hammond, Stewart, etc. They'll do anything to stop a no deal, even if it means bringing down their own government. Well, thank you for that, Jane. I think that may be wise words. But let's go to Andrew in Leamington Spa. Andrew, good evening.
Good evening. I must admit, I echo that one of the last tweets there. I think if it was going to be an election, I think a large number of people obviously this is all aimed at getting people back from the Brexit Party. I think to get a large number of people back, I think you'd need to see the ERG being sort of reasonably happy with what Boris is going to do. And I think there's a little bit of unease, seeing as, to be fair to you, you have publicly and repeatedly said that voting for the withdrawal agreement on the third presentation was a terrible mistake. But the thing is, the people that are inside the tent, yourself and Boris, did actually vote for what Boris himself described was an absolutely terrible idea. And I mean, then you've got Marc Francois, one of the bastions of the ERG, saying that they would vote if Boris tried to tear parts out of the withdrawal agreement and represent it, they would still vote against it. I think whether you have your election before or after, I think if you have your election before Brexit, I think you're right. If you kick the can, you kick the bucket.
Yeah.
But I think if you have the election afterwards, I think if you bring Brino and try and dress it up as Brexit, and people like Steve Baker are unhappy, I still think you will kick the bucket.
I think you're right. I mean, I think that people would see through Brino. That's why I don't think it will happen. Boris Johnson's been very clear that the withdrawal agreement is a defunct agreement. It's not just the backstop, which is obviously problematic, but he's gone much further than that in the leadership campaign to make it clear that the withdrawal agreement itself is defunct. I think we will get a clean Brexit by the 31st of October because Boris has pinned his colours so firmly to that mast. Anyway, thank you for your call, Andrew. It is 6:30. You're listening to me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, live on LBC, and it's time for the news with Lisa Aziz.
Boris Johnson says he has absolutely ruled out calling a general election before the UK leaves the European Union at the end of October. Downing Street has also confirmed this evening the Prime Minister's received a call of congratulations from the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and told her the only solution that would allow progress on a Brexit deal would be abolishing the backstop. A former NHS nurse who lied to police about being abused by a paedophile ring based in Westminster and made up of mostly high-profile public figures has been jailed for 18 years. 51-year-old Carl Beech's claims led to an investigation costing more than £2 million. Sports Direct has just revealed Belgian authorities are demanding more than £600 million in unpaid taxes from the company. The retailer has now published its twice-delayed annual results. It had asked investors to give it more time this morning, which prompted a sharp drop in its share value. LBC weather staying humid tonight with outbreaks of heavy rain across northern, eastern and some central parts of England. Drier and fresher though elsewhere with a low of 11 degrees.
LBC.
Turn to the Telegraph for clarity as Boris Johnson settles into number 10. Can he turn his now famous eminently feasible into something that's everybody pleasable, with plans on a hard border, a hard bargain or a hard Brexit? Turn to the team who know him best. Subscribe now at telegraph.co.uk.
The Furniture Village birthday sale is on now, so chill out in our air-conditioned stores and take away a red-hot deal. Many extra offers end this Sunday.
If you get BT Superfast Fibre Essential, go on, and BT Sport together, go on, you can choose tech worth up to £249 on us, like an Xbox One S All Digital Edition or a Samsung Galaxy tablet. Oh, get in! It's $39.99 a month with a 24-month contract and $29.99 setup. Join by 15th of August in time for the new season. Search BT Broadband. BT. Be there.
CPI increase each March from 2020. BT Sport content and price may change. New customers $47.99 a month from month 25. Terms apply.
Hey, you know what they say. Go big or go home. So get yourself to Big Motoring World for up to 2,000 used BMWs, Audis, Mercedes, VWs, Nissans, Fords, Vauxhalls, Peugeots, Fiats, Mitsubishi, Citroens, Hondas. Oh, I know that's a big list, but I already told you. Go big or go home. See bigmotoringworld.co.uk or find them minutes from the M25. Hit it, ladies.
Big Motoring World. At the Bank of Antandek, they're looking for a mascot.
We need an icon. Something that says high flying to all our mortgage customers.
Like a falcon or a stallion.
Or even better, a parrot. Check it out.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they're concentrating on helping customers find ways to take years off their mortgage with their overpayment calculator. See what's possible at Santander.
All applications are subject to status and our lending criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
We've created unlimited data plans for your business because 1 minute you're the receptionist.
Hello, how can I help?
The logistics manager.
Okay, lift at your end. That's it now, to me.
The new business consultant.
Will do. I'll pop over and give you a quote.
And you've still got to make the tea. Your business doesn't have limits, so why should your data allowance? New unlimited data plans from Vodafone Business. The future is exciting. Ready?
Max download upload speeds apply to data. Coverage may vary. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/terms.
Jacob Rees-Mogg on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Well, welcome back. Thank you for rejoining me after the news. It's been a very interesting day today. I can't help but report on the cricket, where Ireland were bowled out for 38 runs. An incredibly exciting day and a great win for England. I was supposed to have been there yesterday, but instead I had to go to Buckingham Palace to become Lord President of the Council, which I must confess was even better than a day at Lord's, which one can't say of many things in truth. But beyond my excitement over the cricket, the Prime Minister's made a very important announcement about the police. 20,000 extra police will be recruited, and that is starting. And that is important not just because we need the extra police, but it shows Boris Johnson delivering on the promises that he made in the period to be elected as leader of the Conservative Party. And isn't it refreshing when a politician actually does what he says he is going to do? Talking of which, the subject under discussion this evening is that Boris Johnson has said he has ruled out a general election before the 31st of October, therefore before we leave the European Union, and is absolutely determined that we will leave the European Union on that date. And we're discussing whether this is realistic, whether there will have to be an election or not, how it might work. Lots of calls are coming in and many interesting points being made, and I'm very much welcoming calls from people who think there ought to be an election. So please call in if you haven't done so already. We've had an interesting tweet come through which says, Jacob, I really can't see how the parliamentary arithmetic will allow us to leave, but the point I want to make is, please, could we hear a bit more from the government about the benefits of leaving, even with a no deal? We only ever hear about fulfilling the democratic wish of the people, fair enough, but never the actual benefits. Occasionally we hear about the cheaper clothing, footwear and food, but not often enough. Well, thank you very much. That's an important view. And actually, I'm the one who's done a lot of the talking about the cheaper food, clothing and footwear. So I'm glad that you have got that part of the message. But you're right. The government is now run by people who believe in leaving, and therefore we should use the whole arm of government, the whole power of government, to make sure the message is positive. And that message was from Nikki in North Yorkshire. So thank you for that, Nikki. And we're going to go to Rich in Cromer. Rich, good evening, and what are your views?
Hi, good evening, Jacob. Firstly, I'd just like to say I'm totally disillusioned with politics at the moment. I feel that the Conservative Party, it was just a big show for the already the leader waiting in the wings. We've had weeks and weeks of your Conservative elections for the new Prime Minister, and really it was a Boris Johnson show all along. With that, I also feel there is no political party. If we went to an election now, there'd be no political party which would encourage me to vote.
Not one. Who would you vote for, do you think?
To be honest, at this point in time, I'm actually sort of... I don't know, because if I voted to leave to start off with, in the very first time when the vote was put to us a few years ago. I'm now looking at what's available, and it's like a dog's dinner. I really can't see the benefits of any party taking a majority control, and there's for me it's frightening. Because
so I don't suppose you'd want another election because you wouldn't know who to vote for. You'd stay at home.
No. The thing is that every time there's been we've had treason made saying we're going to put Brexit through, we're going to get it through on this date. It doesn't happen. And then what happens is that the people that have voted to leave then become disillusioned. Is this going to happen? Isn't this going to happen? You've got leavers, remainers. Everybody's confused as to what's going on. And I'm starting to think to myself, if I stay and vote to leave again, is Mr. Johnson going to be the right person? I don't think so, because it is pretty much, in my opinion, that it's more about showmanship than it is actually getting the job done.
But aren't you excited that he's getting things done? He's going to have 20,000 more police. It's already starting. It's underway. And the positivity is so exciting and refreshing.
Okay, let me put this to you.
Yeah.
I work in the healthcare sector, and I've already seen dramatic changes in people not being able to get available medicines, which are now preventing people not taking regular medications. I see lots and lots of issues, but in the grand scheme of things, saying one thing, I'm going to give 20,000 police officers, I'm going to start doing this right now, the actual effect is not going to be felt for a very, very, very long time.
Well, they're going to start being employed, I think, in October. So it is getting underway.
But the logistics of 20,000 officers, and you think about the time it takes to train those people and getting up to an acceptable standard so they're actually doing their job properly is not a quick fix solution.
You've got to start somewhere. I mean, there are no quick fixes in that sense. You've got to start somewhere. Anyway, Rich, thank you for your thoughts. It's been really interesting talking to you. I'm going to go to Dan in Thurrock. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening. How would you like to be addressed, Jacob?
Oh, Jacob. No, call me Jacob. That's absolutely fine.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. So my thoughts are, Mr. Johnson, he's hurtling towards a Brexit. He's set up his cabinet. He wants to go 100% Brexit like a cannonball. What about the 48% of the people that voted to remain? Would you say it's not really fair not to take their views into consideration whatsoever? You're going to have an even more divided country than it already is.
I don't get that, I'm afraid. They lost the vote, and if you lose the vote, you have to accept the result. That's how democracy works.
But you're going to have half a country being very, very basically devastated and upset. Do you not think it should be...
I don't think that's right, actually. I don't think that's what opinion polls say, which is really interesting. You make an important point about the 48%.
But you're saying it's just tough.
What I'm looking at in terms of polling is that about 60 to 70% consistently have accepted the result. Obviously, those who voted to leave. And about half those who voted to remain have said, OK, we lost, let's get on with it. There's about 20% of the electorate who voted remain and have never recovered from the shock. The people who...
Where are you getting this information from?
This has been in opinion polls that were out very regularly after the referendum. I haven't seen them say recently, but they consistently showed 60 to 70% had accepted the result.
And what did they say about Brexit voters? Have they changed their minds?
No, if you listen to Sir John Curtis, who's the most distinguished figure in this area, he says that basically nobody's changed their minds at all over Brexit. If there were another referendum, people would vote in the same way, and it would be determined by turnout. But this is a different question. This isn't how would you vote in a referendum. This is, as we voted to leave, do you think it should be implemented? And you get a very big majority of saying, yes, get on with it. So I think most of the country is reconciled to it. And to the remaining 20%, well, ultimately, yes, they lost. And they do have to get over it because we are going to leave.
Do you not think it would be better to try and unite the country and not have leave or remain, try and have a middle ground, have some way of trying to unite the country because the country is split emotionally?
Dan, that just wouldn't unite the country because it wouldn't unite the leavers.
No, someone has to try and find, rather than one side win, one side lose, both sides be completely outraged by whatever, if they're seeing one side be very, very upset. Surely uniting the country, Rory Stewart was saying beforehand, that's what he would try to do. And we talk about the British spirit and the spirit of the Brits and all that. Surely someone can come along. Rory wasn't
uniting the country at all. He was dividing the country because leavers want us to leave. And so that absolutely, I accept there's a percentage who don't want Brexit ever to happen. But 52% did. And you would divide them if you came up with this middle way that didn't really mean leaving.
Or do you mean do? Because it was 3 years ago, wasn't it? People might have changed.
But there's no polling evidence that they have, and I think you need to implement the result first. I think that's an important democratic principle.
Because this is a decision that is supposed to last forever. It's not like a general election where you get another chance, is it? This is going to be something that's going to echo for decades.
We could rejoin if anyone ever wanted to make the case for that. Bear in mind, we had a referendum in 1975 and then another one in 2016. So if you wanted one in another 40 years, I don't think that would be unreasonable.
But may I just summarise? So my question is, there is no representation or seeming care for the people that want to remain, and you say that there's only sort of 20% of the voters who really care enough now.
Who are unreconciled to the result?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just tough.
Well, I also think we unite once we've left, because then it's fact rather than a prospect, and people oppose violently prospect, but they live with fact. I'm just going to try and get in one more caller before the news, so I'm going to go to Dave in the Cayman Islands. A long-distance call. Dave, you've only got a minute, so fire away.
I was just going to say that I think that the current combination of the parliamentary arithmetic and polling data suggests that actually a general election is one of the last things that's likely to happen, because I think that Labour will look at the polling data and think that there isn't much chance of a general election doing them much good in any event. And I also think that when they're considering whether or not to call a confidence motion, I'm not sure they would have any confidence in winning that confidence motion, given that most of the Change UK MPs and or independent MPs who left are probably not going to want to vote for their own Christmas.
I think you have made a brilliant point incredibly succinctly. I think you're right. I think Change MPs would be very cautious. Lots of Labour MPs in Leave seats would be very nervous about voting for an early general election. And the Tories who sought to bring down a government, likewise. Thank you, Dave, for making your point so precisely from the Cayman Islands. This is LBC, proving the point. It's where news comes first. You're listening to me, Jacob Rees-Mogg. It's 6:45 and time for Lisa As Is.
Boris Johnson says he has absolutely ruled out calling a general election before the UK leaves the European Union at the end of October. A former NSPCC volunteer who lied about being abused by a Westminster paedophile ring has been jailed for 18 years. A problem with a radar system that's brought major disruption to passengers at Gatwick and Heathrow airports has now been fixed, but delays will go on for the rest of the day. LBC weather staying humid through tonight with outbreaks of heavy rain across northern, eastern and some central parts of England, a low of 11 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. On the trains, East Midlands trains have a severely reduced service between St Pancras and Kettering. It's after overhead line damage yesterday there, advising you not to travel for the rest of the day or over the weekend. TfL Rail and Greater Anglia have delays of up to an hour between Liverpool Street and Shenfield after a signal failure. There are also severe delays on the Piccadilly line between Acton Town and Heathrow Airport. There are delays and cancellations to flights to and from Heathrow and Gatwick airports. That's after a technical problem earlier at air traffic control. On the roads, there are long delays on the M25 anti-clockwise after a car broke down earlier. It's taking about an hour to queue to the Dartford Tunnel from junction 3 for the M20. And in Camberwell Road is blocked southbound at Medlar Street. That's because of an accident.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Andrew Pearce.
Boris Johnson's pledged today to begin work next month on recruiting more police officers, but is that enough to stop the massive escalation in knife crime?
Andrew Pearce on LBC.
LBC, along with Lloyds Bank, the people behind the M word, are encouraging couples to talk about money together and discussing why money is the ultimate British taboo.
Recognising there's a problem in the first place is your starting point, and so that's often associated with suddenly there's more tension when you're wanting to spend money or get something, and you start noticing some of the signs are building up.
Head to lbc.co.uk for details on the M word from Lloyds Bank, making those conversations about money easier. LBC.
This year, an explorer descended almost 40,000 feet into the Pacific, breaking the record for the deepest ever dive. It's amazing what we can do when we think beyond limits. That's why Vodafone are giving small businesses what they need to reach their full potential with their new unlimited 5G data plans. Plus, with Rapid Insurance, get a replacement phone within 4 hours if something goes wrong. Go beyond limits and see what your business can achieve. Search Vodafone Business Unlimited.
Are you the one who's missing out? Friends, family have told you to do it, but you still haven't. Don't be the one who never claimed back their missold PPI. Billions are still owed to millions of people, just like you, but you've only got till August the 29th. Claim for free to your lender or financial ombudsman, or save time and let us manage it for you. Start your claim now with a simple text to Gladstone Brooks. Just text CLAIM to 66777.
Gladstone Brooks. A Furniture Village birthday sale is on now, so chill out in our air-conditioned stores and take away a red-hot deal. Many extra offers end this Sunday.
Parents, you know your child. You know the way they learn is different to others.
And Interhigh School knows this too. For 15 years, Interhigh has specialised in providing a fully interactive, tailored online school, supporting your child to achieve their best results from primary school age through to A-level. To discover more about Interhigh School, join their next online open evening on the 7th of August. Register at interhigh.co.uk.
Thomas Edison. He's months away from lighting up the world.
The man who controls electricity.
Westinghouse is placing a bid.
Edison Electric, it has to be, can change the whole world. Automation, transportation, communication, the future. Benedict Cumberbatch.
Vultures in every venture. Gotta keep them away.
Michael Shannon.
I have the better system.
Nicholas Hoult.
Nikola Tesla. I fix problems for idiots. There's never gonna be anything named Tesla again.
And Tom Holland.
His current kills people.
Only because you said it would.
The Current War in cinemas now.
Summer's finally here, and at the BMW Summer event, we're celebrating with a wide range of models available to drive away today, so your perfect BMW couldn't be closer. Search BMW Summer Event or visit your local BMW centre before the end of August to find your perfect BMW and explore our range of tailored finance options. BMW UK Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. BMW Finance is subject to status for UK customers over 18 only. Guarantees may be required. T's and C's apply.
Leading Britain's conversation. Jacob Rees-Mogg. Tweet at LBC.
Hello, welcome back. Thank you for rejoining me. Now, some callers have been calling not about the prospect of a general election, but apparently my style guide. So I don't know, John in Derby, whether you're going to call about style guides or you're calling about the election, but it's over to you regardless.
Okay, well, obviously I think there's going to be an election fairly soon, but I am more interested in your style guide, actually, and I have a question about it.
Yes.
Regarding your imperial requirement, I'm just wondering if you know how many yards are in 12 miles.
21,120 or 960 chains.
Indeed. Did you have to look that up when you have the message on the board? Because it's not an easy sum, is it, to be honest, to do in your head?
That's not a difficult change. Anyway, this isn't a math quiz. You should go on another channel. You should go on Countdown or some programme like that.
Okay,
or ring up James O'Brien. He likes doing maths. Let's go to Kevin, a new caller from Worcester. We like new callers. Kevin, hello.
Hello, Jacob.
How are you? What are you calling about? You're calling about style guides, or are you talking?
No. I'm
good.
Not.
You're on the real subject. Thank you. Thank you.
I was just not the. I think it was the caller before the last call before the news was talking about uniting the country, and I was reflecting on that. I'm thinking about something that even could be included in the Conservative manifesto.
What's that?
And that's that. Well, I feel that a lot of people are very concerned, especially the no-deal Brexit. There'll be a lot of job losses and a lot of subsequent home repossessions and evictions, which I think we all agree would be an appalling outcome. So what I'd like to know is if your party believes, as the public are being asked to believe, in Brexit, then can your government make a guarantee to take responsibility, for instance, for rent and mortgage payments to anybody that's facing homelessness if Brexit were to be a failure?
Well, the government always takes responsibility for its policies because you have elections, so that leads to people deciding whether they think what the government has done has worked or not. But the causal effects of policies are always very difficult to work out. So to say you must take responsibility for things that are outside your control simply isn't realistic. But
they are
hold on,
your control.
Let me answer. Because there is the £39 billion that will be available. If we leave, hold on. If we leave without a deal,
£39 billion, it doesn't exist.
Yes, of course it exists. Anyway, the £39 billion exists and can be used to help people who might be hit by specific tariffs. So I'm talking about sheep farmers, particularly, and perhaps fishermen.
Where was that £39 billion drawn from?
That's money that we would otherwise pay to the European Union under the agreement that Theresa May made.
Yeah,
so that really exists. But look, if you're going to deny the existence of the money, I think it's going to be more interesting to go to Malcolm in Bodmin. Malcolm, good evening.
Hello, Jacob. How are you?
Well, thank you, and you?
Jacob, you played a major role in Brexit over the last 10 months. You played a major role in the downfall of a Prime Minister. Your seat is a marginal seat in the southwest. I know that. I live in the southwest. Previously, the southwest, virtually the whole of it was a strong Lib Dem area. If there's, and I don't want to spoil your holiday, Jacob, by the way, but if there is no deal, which it is increasingly looking like, but both of the leaders of the Irish government over the last few days have made it clear, Europe have made it clear, there's no going back on the deal. So if there's no deal, and no deal is stopped by Parliament, and then a referendum occurs and the referendum is lost, would you happily lose your job as both an MP and as a newly appointed minister in the light that millions of people will not lose their jobs?
We're going to leave on the 31st of October. And
if you don't, Jacob?
People in my constituency, according to the East Anglia University, voted to leave by 52 to 48, along with the national average. And
that was at the referendum.
Oh, that's
Jacob.
right, in a very important referendum. And the reason we'll leave is it's the law.
3 years on.
It's the law.
3 years on.
Yeah.
3 years on. 3 years on. No, but Jacob, where there's a will, there's a way. And Parliament, in my view, in my humble view, will stop Brexit.
Well,
so I'll ask again.
Parliament voted for Brexit into law.
So I'll ask again, Jacob. If there is no deal, if
there's no deal, there's no deal. I'm not frightened about leaving with no deal.
And there's an election followed by a referendum and Remain win.
I think.
How will you view that?
Well, I think that'd be a disaster for our country, a humiliation and a contempt for democracy if we don't leave. That we must leave on the 31st of October. And we're at record levels of employment, and leaving the European Union will make things better because we'll be making decisions for ourselves. And look how badly European economies are doing. Really poorly. And youth unemployment in Greece and Spain and so on. So being free from the shackles of the EU can only be good news. Anyway, thank you, Malcolm, for calling. Very interesting point you made. Leon, you want to talk to me about the Style Guide. Leon, over to you.
Yes, just like to say congratulations on your new post.
Thank you. That's kind.
Hopefully you'll do a good job. Fingers crossed. I'd just like to ask about your use of imperial measurements in the new Style Guide that's been set out. Like, what's your reasoning behind that? I was fascinated when I read it.
Well, I'd simply prefer them. I'm more used to them. I still go in miles an hour. I know my height in feet and inches. I know my weight in stone. They're very natural human measurements, and I prefer them.
And I'd just like to ask as well, the ban words using very, unacceptable, and due to were three of the ones that I thought were a bit odd. What's the reason for those being banned?
The reason for very is that very gets thrown in when something.
But you use the word a lot yourself, surely.
I do, and that's why.
I've definitely heard you use that before.
That's absolutely right, and these are for my letters, and this list was drawn up by my staff. And when you read when you read through a letter, you see something that says it was very important. Well, it's probably not actually. It's probably just important, and so you can almost always delete the very. Unacceptable is a dreadful weasel word. People say something.
You've used it so many times yourself?
No, very rarely, actually. I very rarely use unacceptable. It's such an ugly word. And it's used when people mean wrong, but they don't have the courage to say so. So don't say unacceptable. Say it's wrong. That's what you mean. And it's really important that when one writes something.
Surely you should be focusing more on what's, soon to come with the government and creating a huge banned list of words. Like,
no, because
surely you'd want people to focus on the current issues rather than this.
No, because if I'm writing to my constituents, it should be in clear English, and it should make the points that I believe in. It shouldn't use jargon phrases. That's why I've got rid of no longer fit for purpose.
Surely you're a fan of the Oxford Dictionary. Why would you want to ignore something that's written down in that?
Because the use of the words is to hide meaning rather than to elucidate meaning. And therefore you should use words that elucidate meaning. Anyway, we're running out of time, and I'd like to get Jamie from Newcastle in very briefly. Jamie, hello.
Good evening, Jacob.
Evening.
Now, I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong. It may be the case that I need to invest in a copy of Erskine May, as you suggested, in business questions. Probably quite useful since I'm a politics student. But to me, it seems like the case since that the Article 50 Act and Withdrawal Act have both been passed, that in legislation, the day on which we need to withdraw from the European Union is the end of October. That's
the law. Yes,
that's the law. So, if Parliament wishes to prevent a no-deal Brexit, a WTO Brexit, however we wish to refer to it, surely the only way they can then do that would be to pass some piece of legislation to require the government to do one of two things. Either to go to the European Union to ask for a further extension, which we know that Boris doesn't want to do, and quite frankly, it would be at the behest of the European Union if it wanted to, and we're pretty sure Mr. Macron doesn't want us to have that, or to withdraw Article 50, which we know there's probably no majority for in Parliament.
So we leave on the 31st. Well, thank you. You've brought me neatly to an end. It's Ave Atque Vale from me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, live on LBC. Hopefully you have enjoyed the programme very much. I hope you haven't found it unacceptable and a disappointment. Coming up at 10, it's Nick Abbott, but next it's the indefatigable Andrew Pearce.
Jacob, very nice to follow you, and congratulations, by the way, on your cabinet role. Well deserved. Now, coming up in the programme, the appalling fantasist Carl Beach has been sentenced to 18 years in jail for making up stories about a Westminster VIP paedophile ring. I'm going to be speaking to one of his victims' sons about what he's got to say about that. I'm talking to the saintly Anne Widdecombe. She's a Brexit Party MEP now. Is she expecting to do battle with the Conservatives if there is an autumn general election after all? And Boris Johnson today says he's going to start in September recruiting 20,000 police officers. But is that going to be enough to stop the dramatic hike in knife crime? Do we need to look at other things like maybe increasing stop and search? I'm Andrew Pearce, this is LBC. That's all next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, Boris Johnson says he has absolutely ruled out calling a general election before the UK leaves the EU at the end of October. Downing Street has also confirmed this evening the Prime Minister's received a call of congratulations from the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and told her the only solution that would allow progress on a Brexit deal would be abolishing the backstop. Speaking on his LBC show,